Today on the Vocal Minority.
Are you part of the silent majority? Or are you part of the vocal minority?
Motherfuckers, go. Attention, please.
If America can be saved, and I don't know if it's too late, but it'll be through radio shows like this new kind.
This shit here feels like a whole entire world collapse. Motherfucker!
The revolution will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised. The revolution will be no rerun, brothers.
It's the vocal minority.
The revolution will be live.
Hey, what's good? It's your boy MC. Welcome to another episode of the Vocal Minority Report. As always, you could have downloaded any podcast in the world, but you're here with us. We appreciate that. We've got a great show for you today. Our guest is a retired Marine Lieutenant Colonel and judge advocate, lawyer, podcast enthusiast, and esteemed contributor and panelist to many shows, including Task and Purpose, as well as he's written pieces for Vice News. Some have described him as a real-life superhero even. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome a white guy who's cooler than you think. He's definitely my boy. We have the great James Weirick on the show.
MC, thank you for having me. I really appreciate that intro. That's fantastic.
Hey, no problem. You know, I appreciate you coming on the show. I feel like after that, I need to add in some applause or some cannon fire or something. But we're really glad to have you on. So first, how's it going for you today?
It's going really well. Past couple days, you were kind enough to have me on the show, so I've been going back and listening to some of your old podcasts, and it's really you just have some great ones, especially with Rabia and Asia. And everything around cereal, I've really enjoyed.
Hey, well,
you've had some great interviews, by the way.
Hey, I appreciate it. You're too kind. Like you're the one person who listens to episodes more than once, so I really appreciate that. or of my show anyway. But no, you might be one of the only guests that actively listen to the show, so that's awesome. So
well, you had on so many people that I really enjoy. I mean, Rebecca Lavoie, I love Crime Writers on.
Right.
She's been really helpful to me in my podcasting career, and everybody from Undisclosed similarly. So you get some really good bookings. I'm honored to be in here.
Well, no, that's awesome, and thank you again. And speaking of Rebecca, I think that's might be where I first heard you, but obviously I've definitely heard you on that show, and like I said, on Task and Purpose. And so so I've been wanting to link up with you for a while. You're one of those people too who already. You're notable. You're amongst the one name thing, right? You know, so I called James Weirick, but you.
Yeah, that's right. In case anyone out there wonders why, I've always called Weirick. That's just what I go by. So I know they would get people would occasionally get upset at the host of Task and Purpose that Lauren Katzenberg called me Weirick, as though that was somehow degrading. And I said, no, she's a close friend and colleague. I like her very much, and I'm glad she calls me that.
But it is funny though, because I guess as civilians, there's a certain level of esteem to your ranking. So it's like, yeah, are you sure you can just call him Weirick? Like, is he cool with that? But that's good though, because that puts you amongst the, some of the other notables and greats. There's Prince, there's Denzel, there's Schwarzkopf, there's Petraeus, there's Trump. I mean, you're in good company with the one name thing.
And then, as you know, my friend, there's always people out there that are looking to hate. The same way that some people didn't like you saying your boy. Like, wait a second.
Right.
We can speak in a modern vernacular. That's the beauty of podcasting. It's relationship based, and we get to have discussions in the way that we talk in our everyday lives.
I think that's the whole point of. I mean, it's the conversation. It's the. Yeah, I mean, you get it. I mean, and that's why I called you, my boy at the beginning of the episode. So, that proves that you do actually listen to the show. I appreciate it because you're certainly a forward thinker, for lack of a better term. And that's another reason why I want to have you on the show, because I think I don't know if you necessarily buck the trend. Trend is not the right term. If you buck the stereotype or maybe a stereotype born out of ignorance, as a lot of them probably are, based on, and some truth, but as to what, a JAG, a lieutenant colonel, a Marine, you're way more down than I would have maybe given you credit for, which is obviously a fault of my own. I'm citing my own prejudice here initially, but I don't know if you want to give your opening positioning statement on what you're into podcast wise and generally, and just kind of what makes you the open-minded, well-rounded person you are, and then we can kind of get into your background and your story, and kind of get into all the other places I want to take us.
Well, thank you for that. I'll say first of all, I was lucky enough to get into podcasting through Task and Purpose, Lauren Katzenberg, Brian, Adam Jones. They brought me in because I had done some writing for them. And then, so I just came in really as the military justice expert. And when I was in the military, before I retired, I was a prosecutor, a defense attorney, appellate government counsel. I prosecuted down in Guantanamo Bay. I worked for generals, so I had done everything around the military justice system. So they brought me on for that at Task and Purpose, and then I was really fortunate to get with Rebecca Lavoie with Crime Writers, and she introduced me to the incredible team over at Undisclosed. And so kind of through Undisclosed, I'll be coming out with my own podcast that's going to be about military justice. And hopefully that should drop around the 15th of September.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I'm really looking forward to that, because what you bring to the show, because that it's a military justice perspective, but it's also through the lens of, like I said, I don't know what the best, just a thoughtful, a very knowledgeable person, clearly, but very thoughtful, and maybe a little counter to what I would initially, and some of our listeners may initially think, because it's funny. We have an assistant at the show who was helping me with some research, and she saw your picture and she was like, "Oh, wait a minute, like, you having him on the show?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's my guy." Don't. I'm like, "Yeah, that's my guy." But anyway, so.
And I think part of that is Central California, kind of the agricultural belt here, and it might not have been, to be honest with you, the most progressive place growing up. I was fortunate to go away and go to school in urban areas. For both undergrad and law school. You went to
USC, right?
Yeah, USC and Seton Hall. So I was in South Central Los Angeles and Newark.
Okay, right. Okay, so you may have been around one or two black people, maybe, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I had such a positive experience in the military that I want to remain open to just learning as much as I can about, different people and cultures. And I'll tell you, podcasting has really helped with that. In fact, I was just reflecting on this. You ever listen to Sampler?
I like Gimlet's shows. Yeah, I listen to Sampler. I like, was that Brittany Lewis or whatever? Yeah, I listen to Sampler.
Yeah, Brittany, she's incredible. And she did a great story on Lemonade, when that came out. And I really appreciated just getting that cultural point of view of how, what did they called Beyonce, said she was a Texas Bama.
Right, exactly. Yes.
And that the women on there it was inclusive. They were saying that they were so proud of her, because she was from where they were from, and, she was like them. And so I think that podcasting really helps break down a lot of those barriers that, otherwise, if it comes out as a news story or something and we hear about racial issues, it just doesn't ring as true as just hearing people talk about things.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a really good point. It was one thing that always, obviously I want everyone to listen to the show, and clearly from some of the subject matter, not every episode, and the title, of the show, folks think we lean one way, and and obviously we do. We certainly are here for the people and people of color, black people, but also we're for every underdog and any vocal minority, but or minority in general, and the marginalized. But would that be?
That's the same. I mean, my podcast, Military Justice. I'll tell you right now, I'm in favor of military justice reform. I try to give both sides of it, but everybody, I think it's legitimate and good to say that you have a slant, that you want to represent the voices of those who aren't represented.
Right, yeah, I mean, because if you're going to talk and take up time and try to get in people's ears and mindsets, you might as well have a point of view and perspective and be true to that, like you said, because that truthfulness is what endears you to folks and what changing minds, changing hearts, or whatever, cliche that I'm butchering there. These conversations and this casualness is important, as you mentioned. This this radio type thing, that connection still rings very true to people.
Well, and television, they have such limited amounts of time to be on. It turns into everybody's talking point, and they're not having a true discussion. That's true across the board.
Probably more producer influence. You got 4 boxes on the screen, and everyone's just trying to get in on that one, and the dominant host. Yeah, I got you. No, that's
now. That being said, I wouldn't mind all those ad dollars going my way, and then I'm sure you wouldn't mind GMC or some other big time sponsor.
Hey, all day. Hey, we are open. Yes, we are open for business. So yeah, no, we are trying to grow, and obviously we know capital is how you grow. So yeah, no, we'll take it. But that's the beauty of this, though. Like, where the fact that folks are able to monetize and retire, semi-retire, start real businesses out of this, thing that we're doing. So yeah, no, that's very, very cool. It just gives us this voice. So we can jump into you now. So California kid, USC Seton Hall, and obviously you end up a Marine and an officer. But I'd like to know what brought you to enlist. I'm always curious, especially post 9/11. But as far as the social consciousness of our armed forces, kind of post 9/11, I feel like is when that.
I'm gonna give you a pretty boring answer on that. I don't know when I decided to join the military. I had always wanted to.
Okay.
And I was pre 9/11.
Well, of course, so. Right. Okay, because I wasn't sure, if patriotism, nationalism, is it, you just want to kick ass? Obviously, you're very intelligent and degreed, so, you're a little different. But as far as, the motivation to enlist or get commissioned, if there is no story, then okay, cool. We'll
yeah, it's kind of boring to tell you.
Okay, that's no problem. Then let's get into the more amped up stuff, which I wanted to ask you about being a JAG specifically. So my loose working knowledge of what a JAG is, because honestly, I don't know I don't think I knew what that acronym stood for until I heard Rabia say it. I mean, honestly, I feel like you were on someone's show and they were describing you and said judge advocate, and I was like, oh, that's what I really have.
Right. Oh, that's a common problem because JAG means Judge Advocate General.
Right. Okay.
There's only the generals are those actual JAGs. So to call somebody a JAG, they're usually not JAGs. I was never a general officer. So we're all judge advocates.
Okay.
And that kind of plays into the reason for that, Rabia and her team and Dennis brought me on to do my podcast, because I want to do a podcast about military justice that explains it to everybody, to kind of pull back the curtain. We use a lot of strange words. We don't talk about trials. We call them courts martial. We don't have jury members. We don't have jurors. We have members. And there's a lot of things like that's what I'm seeking to explain to the general public. Because you have right now the young men and women that are being commissioned or enlisting in the military have really, because one of my old bosses, his son right now is in boot camp down in San Diego. He's never known a time where the United States hasn't been at war.
Right.
You and I are old enough to, 9/11 was a big deal.
Right.
He was 3 when 9/11 happened.
Wow.
So he doesn't even remember that. So that's my reasoning that this generation has grown up with our country at war the entire time, and they're still enlisting and joining the military in droves, and that they deserve a better form of military justice. That I'm not saying scrap everything, but there are improvements that need to be made.
Okay, yeah, and I want to get into those too as we get on. I want to get into what's the specifics that you have in mind and kind of what you all in that mindset of military reform, what kind of challenges you guys face as well. But I wanted to give you what I think I know what a judge advocate does, and I want to see if you can tell me if I'm correct and then if I'm hitting nail on the head, what I'm trying to say. So here's my impression, right? So a judge advocate is there to fight for military members' rights. It's their job more or less to fight and account for the everyday enlisted man, even though you're governed by the UCMJ, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, to make sure there's no injustice between military members. And your job, I guess, is to take the emotion out of that and give a legal and thoughtful. Is any of that correct? I guess is the first thing.
No, that's definitely correct.
Okay.
In the court martial arena. In the military, there's probably about 10,000 lawyers, maybe 7,000 if you take all the services. We do everything from the real mundane stuff about like the zoning requirements for a base.
Okay.
Or all the way to being deployed with, out at sea with units. And then we do exactly what you're talking about. Criminal justice is to ensure as much as we can a fair process for our service members who are accused of crimes.
Okay. But there's still both sides of that, right? Actually, well, how does it work as far as the prosecution and the, I guess it's probably not called defense, but
the defense. For example, I served as both. I had served as a prosecutor, and then later, at another tour, I served as a defense counsel.
Okay.
And then I served later as an appellate counsel. But by and large, you're just assigned to one of those two sides, and the vast majority are JAGs do a great job, and they're very, very much dedicated to protecting the rights of the military members.
Okay, so you're assigned. So just like any other post or position or whatever, you're not making a choice. In the private sector, you're choosing to go work for the county or to go open a private practice in defense. But out in the military, okay, that makes sense.
No, you can definitely voice your preference, but as all the manpower, the HR at headquarters will say, well, the needs of the Corps come first. So
I got you.
You can say, hey, I'd like to be a defense counsel or I'd like to be a prosecutor, but they send you where you're needed.
Okay, I got you. That makes sense. As I mentioned, with that, we were talking about the legal aspect and being thoughtful and taking the emotion out of things, bringing that legal mind out as you do. So kind of, pardon the pun here, but to kind of get to the black and white of the issues. Right. So now talking about military, black and white in California, the other athlete in California, with football season, I wanted to get into definitely Kaepernick and the whole controversy. To me, seems like a silly word regarding this specific situation. But I guess I'd like your thoughts initially on his stance and his level of activism, and then obviously the reaction from, I should be the representative of white America for a minute, and then let's talk about veterans specifically, reacting in a negative fashion to his protest or bringing light to an issue that we're all clearly aware of. But so I'll get your thoughts and insight on that if you don't mind.
Yeah, first of all, I saw this tweet and it's so perfectly, I can't find it again, but it so perfectly summed this up that it talked about white America had complained during the summer that there were too many violent protests. And then Colin Kaepernick quietly sits down during national anthem, and white America says, well, we don't want you quietly protesting either. And I thought that perfectly encapsulated it. I mean, what Colin Kaepernick is doing is what people should be doing. He is an accomplished man who is now, using his celebrity to voice his opinion on a political and social matter in America. And he's doing so in a nonviolent, quiet, or not quiet, but to tell you the truth, I don't really understand the opposition to him unless you just want to say, unless it's coming from a position of, well, we have this many men and men of many colors being killed, while being arrested, and we just don't want to talk about that ever.
Right.
And that's just wrong. We should that can't be our position. That is a subject for debate. And so I think he's done absolutely the right thing. I mean, he's not grandstanding about it. I believe Colin Kaepernick very much believes in his point of view. You see a lot of his teammates are supporting him, and he's voicing his opinion about an important matter of the day. Right.
And if you look at his Twitter, like, he's been on this for a long time. Like he's I'm actually surprised at how passionate and outspoken he's been in the past, let's say, 18 months. He's a part, as much as social media makes you a part of a movement, he's as outspoken as you can be via social media already, so the idea that because someone happened to notice him sitting down created such outrage is just, there will always be something.
What he believes is an injustice, and he's trying to rectify it.
Right.
I mean, that's what we should expect from all people of substance in America, that they should, voice their convictions in a respectful manner and try to foment social change. Anybody that's opposed to that, I don't really care to address, to tell you the truth.
You know what? And thinking about it now, I'm thinking, so are all these people outraged when, I can't think of a certain artist off the top of my head, but the not going to North Carolina, I'm like, where's the backlash there? Where's the kind of visceral reaction? And then, in this day and age of every movement first of all, everything is a movement, which is an odd thing, and then the hashtags. And then if we draw to veterans specifically, we get into the question of national anthem and flag and what really represents, the United States of America and our roles. So, and I don't know why, I'm really kind of confused about the whole veteran kick up, because it's not like the national anthem, go ahead. I'm sorry.
My friend, I can't help you on, because I don't understand it either.
Okay.
It's not as though veterans have some special ability to be outraged about the national anthem, or that, we're somehow in control of that. And I mean, you do have a lot of veterans who, later go on to law enforcement. I can understand them, possibly, but it's not a veterans issue. This is
right.
Right. This is a man trying to express his opinions about how he thinks America can be improved. He doesn't hate America. He likes America. He loves America.
Right. And people point out all the time, it's made him a lot of money. I'm sure he knows that every single day, the amount of money that him being an American is. I don't think he's mad. Yeah, right. Yeah, but people love to point out that money thing.
And I don't agree with that we somehow should have, like, okay, well, athletes have made a lot of money, so that they should just care about cars and houses and then forget about social issues.
Right.
I think that's much worse than somebody having a strong conviction about a social issue and trying to change things.
Because in reality, if we talk about it, let's just go back, go back 15 years. There weren't that many black quarterbacks to begin with. Obviously, if we keep going back and back and back. So, it's an accomplishment in of itself for him to even be in the position he is and have some level of cachet. And because of his accomplishments, being a black quarterback is still relatively new and rare in our society. I mean, we've had them, Doug Williams, obviously there's been, but as, as prevalent as they are now, same thing with coaches. So I often wonder if some of this is, and this isn't specific to veterans, but if there just exists this, and I think this has a lot to do with kind of my opinion on Trump supporters, like just deep down inside, there's just this anger or frustration or something that exists in some folks, and they hide behind patriotism or nationalism or the flag or whatever, or even being a veteran or the service, not like there's not tons of black service members or service members of color, but anyway. So, and I don't know, I'm kind of riffing there, but I
understand what you're saying, that they're looking to be outraged by something.
Right.
And believe me, I take no pride in this. I don't like it. I don't like, but it's hard to see where this isn't racially motivated. And I'm not. Maybe if we looked at this in a different way, that if we just looked at the number of people who were shot and killed while being arrested are overwhelmingly men.
Right.
That doesn't happen with women.
Right.
So if we said men's lives matter, that we're just calling this issue that we should always be looking to reform our systems.
Right.
And our goal should be nobody ever gets shot while being arrested. And like you say, that it's part of the hashtag moment that we're in. You can't put enough sometimes in that hashtag. And
right.
Blue lives matter, white lives matter. The point is we should always be looking to reform our systems so that no one should ever die while being arrested. Right.
Yes. Right. Yes. And if anything is out of whack, then we should take steps to fix that in any regard. Right. I mean, if something is off, out of balance, that should be our goal in any walk of life, especially when it comes to killing people. I mean,
Right.
like that should always.
And we should be looking for better training. We should be looking, to recruit police officers from different walks of life, recruit maybe different sexes, maybe
right.
that if you had more female police officers, they wouldn't be as quick to use such extreme violence.
Interesting.
And so what I'm saying is it's not that like police are on one side. Police, any rationally thinking member of a police force has to know that they should always be improving. They should always be, looking at how they can be doing their job better, safer for them, and safer for those that they're arresting.
The better they police us, if that makes any sense, the easier it is on, and us, the general us, not black people, everybody.
Right.
The better it is on them in general, especially in the areas of. Well, I wasn't going to say high crime, but I guess shootings don't only happen in high crime areas. But no, you're exactly right.
And they did. I think they did a good job. Not plugging another podcast, but you see that second season of Undisclosed, where the Joey Watkins case.
Right.
That police misconduct isn't defined by only racial groups.
No, not at all.
Socioeconomic groups there. And one thing, I gotta say this, I would be remiss if I didn't. But no matter, and I would tell this to a client, I'd tell this to one of my Marines, a family member, whatever, no matter what the anger level is, the protest can't be at time of arrest.
Okay.
That I'd rather see never again another police shooting. And that we need to voice the protest at a time other than at time of arrest. And so I just put that out there for, believe me, men of any color or creed or nationality, that resisting at the time the police officer's arresting you that can't happen.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with you
I'm just saying that from the point of view of,
Well, right. Why put yourself...
You don't want to be dead right.
No, yes. No, exactly right. Like with the gentleman in South Carolina, I believe, is where he ran from the cop. He was pulled over. He ran from the cop and he tried to plant the taser on him. Do you remember that?
Right.
I think it was South Carolina. So, yeah. But with that one, I'm like, had he not run from him, he would probably still be alive. I'm not justifying his death, obviously, but in that specific instance, I'm like, he didn't have to. If you watch the full video from dash cam pull over to their casual conversation initially, and then he takes off running, which is resisting in effect. I'm just, so anyway, to your point where I'm like, yeah, that's senseless. And I think that's a problem where
we had that out here in Fresno. We had, what was the young man's name? Justin, and he was a young white man that was shot by the police, and it was on video. And I hesitate to say that, like, we shouldn't be looking for it was Justin Horton out here in Fresno, and it's not like we should be looking at a scorecard of, now we had a black man or a white man shot. We should be looking at, we shouldn't want anybody being arrested ever shot. So
Correct.
that's my advice that I would just give it to any loved one, that the protest, the way Kaepernick's doing it, the protests over the summer are, the short of the violence, but those are how we redress things in America.
Right.
But just for the individual's safety at time of arrest, I mean, that can't be it.
Well, you're exactly right. Yeah, I mean, for self-preservation,
Right.
I mean, dead men and women cannot protest, cannot file lawsuits, cannot. I think any reasonable person listening would agree with that for sure. So,
and maybe we reach somebody that that doesn't run, or and shoot, maybe we save somebody, or help somebody make that right decision and say, listen, I need to later protest this in court or file a civil lawsuit, and that's the way to redress a wrong.
Right, because if anything, I mean, my advice would be, hey, don't talk to the cops. So, hey, let them take you, and then just wait. You know what I mean? And just keep your mouth shut, and
Exactly.
and like you said, and hope things work out. Hope is not necessarily a strategy, but like again, you need to be alive to be able to
just be quiet and ask for a lawyer. And
exactly right.
That's the best way to move forward.
Exactly. I did want to touch on one more thing on the veterans piece of it, because I just wanted to bring up that, as far as I know, and I'm not a veteran, but on the re-enlistment, people swear to defend the Constitution of the United States of America, never the flag or the anthem, right? Like that's so.
Right, and the Constitution has that pesky amendment about the ability of free speech and to redress grievances.
Okay,
and I think I stand much more for Colin Kaepernick's constitutional right to express his grievances with the government of the United States in a respectful and cogent manner and truly held. I don't think anybody thinks he's doing this as a publicity stunt. I mean, this man truly has these beliefs.
I've heard some people say that, though. I did hear, actually, a show I really like here in Dallas. One of the hosts did say that this was well-timed for him to get, additional exposure in the preseason. It was a couple weeks ago or whatever. And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" but so
he just needs to up his play. I mean, he needs to go back about 3 years to how well he was playing back then. But I don't think this is a publicity stunt.
No,
he's a man of true conviction.
Another thing I want to talk to you about, and this will lead us into, I think, the military justice and talking about reform. I had recently seen where some Air Force bases, during their, I believe it's called status and discipline meetings, and I don't know if every branch, has. Are you familiar? Is that a common thing? Status and discipline.
Yeah, we could. They'll all call them something different, but yes, those are usually briefings about safety and other things like that.
So in this is quarterly, but in these safety, and specifically they were discussing crimes being committed and obviously the discipline regarding those crimes. One thing that was noticed amongst this one specific base, and then I guess they then found out it's throughout the command, which covers multiple bases, is my understanding. What they've noticed is a disproportionate number of arrests and punishment. The number is regarding Black people or African Americans. It's higher, and it's come up because I guess it's high enough that it's high enough now that it's notable, and that they're seeing it across this one sect of bases. I don't know this to be the case. If that is true across the other branches, you may be able to speak to the Marines as far as the arrest numbers, which I guess no one would probably be surprised that they may mirror civilian life, as I'm aware that, a lot of military life, especially in the States, resembles civilian life, of course. I don't know if you agree with that specific point or not, but
I'll say that, and I'm fairly critical of certain aspects of the military justice system, but I think overall race isn't much of an issue.
Okay.
There are problems that pervade parts of military justice, and they're applied equally harshly to members of any racial group. And again, this is coming from a white male, but I don't see that I think the military over the years still has a way to go, has made some really good strides when it comes to racial relations. I mean, he never. I didn't feel that was as much of an issue inside the military. And
that's why we have you on, to get your perspective. It's about your individual.
It's not like my clients. I mean, as a prosecutor or as a defense attorney, there wasn't an overwhelming number of any particular racial group.
Okay.
It was there was a smattering of everybody there.
And to that point, I guess formerly military equal opportunity, and I guess now just EO or equal opportunity. There has, at least in this specific basis that I was talking about, there has not been a rise in more complaints. So one may have nothing to do with the other, but as far as, there may be more arrests amongst African Americans, but there has not been a rise in complaints for mistreatment or someone acknowledging that. So I'll note that as well. Yeah, just something to throw out there to be cognizant of, for sure.
I think the racial issues that remain within the military are a little more nuanced. They aren't that law enforcement issue. They're that kind of stodgy old view of not liking people with different hair or different.
You're a skilled podcaster there, because we've got a story to talk about with different hair there. So when it comes to military justice, the need to reform, I'd like to know what that looks like for you specifically.
I think just some fundamental things, like as it stands right now, the commander, the convening authority, as we call him, usually the general officer, he makes the decision, normally a he, sometimes she's, but he makes the decision on what charges to bring. He chooses the jury. He has, in my opinion, far too much control right now of the military justice system.
Okay.
And that we need to move to, as other countries have, and to a legally trained individual who's making those prosecutorial decisions. Some other things we need are. I'm sorry. So I just want to clarify. So the commander is not legally has no. Can you clarify that? Or they're not legally trained. They're guys that they command troops. They fly planes. They drive ships. That's what they do. And then we also give them the requirement to make decisions on these charges. So they, like, for example, if the civilian equivalent would be the district attorney. So you have the district attorney there in Dallas. He's always going to be a lawyer,
right?
Or she's always going to be a lawyer. In the military,
in our case, she's a lawyer who has some personal problems, who has to step down. In our case, we don't have the best DA running, but that has nothing to do with anything. She unseated Craig Watkins, who started the Conviction Integrity Unit and was very important. And she's got some issues. Susan Hawk does. So anyway, that's a big non sequitur. So go back to what you were saying. No, yes.
And so in the military, it would be the equivalent of her choosing the jury and the jury all at least indirectly working for her.
Okay.
So the jury in the military is service members that the general handpicks and that at least at some level work for him. So we need reform there. We need reform in our military judges. Our military judges don't serve for a fixed amount of time, so they're more subject to outside influences. We just need to further professionalize. It's what we did after World War II. After World War II, there was, I believe, 800,000 courts-martial, and something like 30,000 felony convictions.
Wow.
And so after World War II, you had the UCMJ, that they made it more fair for the service members.
Okay.
So after this 15 years of war, we need to and like all of our governmental systems, we should always be reevaluating and trying to make them better.
It's funny because, especially in this day and age of, as we talk about podcasting and bringing things to light, as a lot of shows that we're fans of have done and are doing continually, and that's what your show, I'm sure is going to do. And part of the point is, as you mentioned, to further this conversation and make it maybe more common in the normal vernacular, because there's so much that happens with our military in general, not just specific to the justice system, things that,
Well,
we definitely wouldn't know.
I think anybody involved in social change through podcasting, we're all walking in the huge shoes of Rabia Chaudry and Sarah Koenig.
Right.
That they've shown that this is a medium that people listen to, want to get involved with, and want to look to make it a better society.
What do you think the biggest obstacle between the military justice reform is? Is it just apprehension from the Senate in general against some changes, or what do you think? Or is it just the normal, I'll say brass for that's probably, I don't know if that's the right term to use or not.
That's the exact way to
okay. So yeah, what is it? Government? Is it Senate? Is it brass? Is it both? Or what do you think you guys are?
In the greatest amount of fairness I can give, military generals and admirals, they are apprehensive of change because they have a very important job. I mean, they have the protection of our nation and the lives of soldiers, Marine, airmen, and sailors in their hands. And so they don't want change. So when it comes to changing the Uniform Code of Military Justice, they're against it. But I would argue that, unfortunately, our generals are the last people you want to ask about any reform. We can go back to 1948, 49, 48 when President Truman ordered the military to be desegregated. He issues that order, and even after that, the chairman, so the chief of staff of the Army, highest ranking Army general, Omar Bradley, he pretty much refuses the order and says, we'll desegregate when the rest of the military desegregates. This is particularly bad for my Navy and Marine Corps life. So after President Truman had said to desegregate, the Marine Corps was still defending segregation, and they said of our 8,000 officers in the Marine Corps, one black man.
Wow.
One African American. And they were still defending their policies. So I think that, the military is good for many, many reasons, but on social change, they are very loath to make any change. And it requires members of our government, members of the Senate, to change things despite what the military commanders want.
Okay.
Because otherwise they just wouldn't do it. They wouldn't have desegregated. They had to be forced to.
Yeah, okay.
And so, because people will argue with me and say, oh, well, that was a long time ago. Everything's changed. Don't ask, don't tell. You had 1,500 admirals and generals say that repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell and allowing open service of homosexuals would destroy our military. They said that it would break the all-volunteer force. Hasn't happened. And so we need reform, but we need to – you've got to have reform without relying on these people. And in their defense, they said, well, this worked while I was, for 30 years in the military.
Right.
So let's never change anything. But if we listen to them, we would still have a segregated force, which would be – that'd be devastating. That'd be horrible.
Of course.
We wouldn't want that.
It sounds like the same forces that control everything and that stop progress in every other realm, that. Oh, wait,
let me correct something. So the Marine Corps was defending its segregation policy, and it had one African-American officer of its 8,200. And for the Navy, they had only 5 African-American officers out of 45,000.
Goodness.
So when we're looking to reform parts of the military over the objections of generals, it should be done. It's the right thing to do.
Right. Yeah.
Their own devices. 5 out of 45,000. That's horrible.
Yeah, I didn't even want to break out the calculator and figure out that percentage. I don't have.
Listen, I'm a lawyer. I don't know math.
That's well, I know 5 goes into 45, but all those zeros, I don't even want to mess with it. So yes, but okay. Earlier in the conversation, we discussed Kaepernick and activism, and this isn't an obvious parallel, but or maybe not a parallel at all, but you also took a stand, and obviously I'll let you speak about it. But in my opinion, and what I know of it, you took a stand and were outspoken, I'm sure many times, but one specific time in your career. And I was wondering if you could get into the details of that for our audience, tell the story, and I guess what ultimately led to you filing a complaint against a general, because that's what happened, correct?
Unfortunately, it wasn't just a general. It was our highest ranking general.
Okay.
The Commandant of the Marine Corps, Jim Amos.
Okay, wow.
And so I was involved, and I worked for the general who was eventually assigned to, back in 2012, there was a YouTube video that surfaced of about a half dozen Marine Corps snipers who were urinating on dead bodies in Afghanistan.
Right.
So we're involved in that, and they were taking it to court-martial over a number of months. I kind of anguished about this because there were a lot of, and if anyone who's listened, especially the first year of Serial, you will know about discovery violations. That Anon's defense team wasn't provided with all the discovery. We were having the same issue with those urination cases.
Okay. That
the commandant and his lawyers, Von Airy and Bobby Hogue, weren't turning over the required documentation so that those Marines could defend themselves. So that leads me to filing a DOD IG complaint. Lots of hair pulling by my immediate commanders.
Right.
They were very supportive. I worked for some great people. Colonel Jesse Gruder and General Mills. They were very honest and forthright men. But it was a testing time in my life. But in the end, I'm very happy about what I did. I don't regret it, and I think it helped to bring to light some of the problems that you have in the really insular community of the general officers in the military, and that they kind of get a little too sold on their hype about that they're above the law, and none of us are.
Right.
We all need to, and you can see that what happens, in the Anon Syed case, that it was very similar like that. There were discovery violations that had to be rectified, and I knew. Believe me, it wasn't easy for me to do, and depending on the day, I'm not sure if I'd do it again. Most days I said I would, but in the end, I'm happy that I did what I did. So, and it's given me this entree to work with, Rabia and her team to bring some of these things to light, and I've been received some wonderful help. I've made some great friendships. Congressman Walter Jones from North Carolina.
Okay.
So it was an interesting ride, and I definitely will get into that. I'm not going to start with that on my podcast, but eventually I'll get into more of those details. Probably would be about a 6-part podcast episode, but I promise to eventually do that.
I mean, I'm sure, especially if you get into because I've read, the response and there's a whole lot of layers to that story for sure. So I appreciate you giving.
And right now, I'm trying to copy the beautiful and talented Asia McClain. About 5 times during your interview, she said, "Oh well, don't worry, that's in the book."
Right. Yes. You're exactly right. Yeah. She was quite media and promo savvy with.
She's a really interesting woman.
Yeah, no doubt. I hate to say her character because clearly she's a lovely, wonderful person, but talk about layers. Yeah, she is an interesting
characters in a bad way. She's a spicy person. She's great at tweeting. She's an interesting person.
Oh yeah, I like her on Twitter because she's definitely all about that. She's like, come get some. You want to say something about me? Okay, she's ready to defend herself and speak frank and candidly, and it is not afraid to talk about these parallels.
And that's a lot very similar to Rabia.
Right. Oh, exactly. Oh my God. Yes. I mean, it was such a pleasure to have Rabia on this show to talk to her for an hour and just her passion and everything that she's done. I mean, all of us, I mean, so many people have a voice now in a platform because of Rabia and her mission, and obviously in all the things that she's been able to. You talk about affecting change in 3 years' time, but specifically, I guess 2 years' time or whatever it is, as far as Adnan's case, and then obviously all the work that Bob Ruff is doing with in Smith County with those cases, and there's just so much more, and obviously all this attention and what you're doing. So yeah, no, Rabia, I don't know if I said it on the episode, but I was thinking to include that, she's kind of the godmother of a lot of this advocacy and that is out there. And she, probably doesn't say that. And she was very quick to say that, there's tons of people that have been doing this work forever, but, it's just the perfect storm that, out of such tragedy that all of this has really been able to spin up and spin off and create some goodness and just more awareness as we keep discussing, because so that's another.
Well, I think that Brittany Luce, I think she refers to Koenig, as Mother Podcast, and
exactly,
and,
yes, right.
And Koenig wouldn't have had that story without Rabia.
Right, exactly.
Rabia is a force. She is and a lovely woman, and just really gracious, and I've met her personally at a book signing recently, and she's just really a top-notch person. Oh
yeah, no doubt. Yeah, no. See, I haven't had the pleasure of meeting her in person, but I've talked to her obviously on the show and a couple of times. So she's lovely, and yeah, very. Well, obviously, I guess we're all anxious to see the outcome there and get Adnan home. I mean, that's the ultimate goal. And then, as you mentioned, their great season of Undisclosed season 2 with on Joey Watkins down in Rome, Georgia, and the work that that Colin Miller and Susan Simpson are doing on that case as well. So yeah, I mean, she has done, and they are doing a lot for sure.
Yeah, and I think what they've done, and I hope that what you and I also are looking to do is so we have some change that goes beyond just the specific case. That
of course
we open people's eyes to these systems and these institutions that need some reform. We're not saying tear down everything. We're saying that things need to be changed.
Well, right. As we mentioned earlier, I mean, if like with this shooting, if something is out of whack, it's incumbent upon all of us as citizens, as Americans, as human beings, as people, as world dwellers, to want to take care of things that just should not happen, that are out of whack, that are disproportionate. That should be our mission, no matter, any of our backgrounds, because collectively, we share, if we just talk about the American thing, and I don't want to be too whatever, but, I always tell people, hey, I'm born on the 4th of July in Plano, Texas. It doesn't get any more American than that, right? So like, I'm pretty, I like this place, you know what I mean? But I recognize that this place could be better. And there's people who have it way worse than me. And I think that's important to keep shining a light on. And, as we walk this earth and breathe. And anyway, so yeah, so I could go on a long stream of consciousness, but I'll move us forward though, back to this stuff, because talking about advocacy and Rabia, I just want to ask you another question regarding you, as far as, do you think that what you did was just a natural extension of what you feel you're called to do as a lawyer, and or I was just going on and on about, human being, citizen, or whatever, I'm just curious for you personally, when you make any decision, but especially when it comes to legally, or in this instance of filing this complaint against such a high ranking, or the highest ranking Commandant General there, internally, how you may have handled that, or how you look at that, law versus just your own moral compass and how you feel as a person.
It's hard to break them up, but as a Marine officer, as a lawyer, I knew that being honest and doing the right thing is ultimately my highest calling. That I need that I owe it to the system. I owe it to those Marines. And it wasn't the easiest thing to do. It had definite negative repercussions in other parts of my life, but it's to a certain extent, it's that shaving test that could I shave in the morning and still look myself in the mirror if I didn't do it?
Okay.
And I knew if I didn't do it that I couldn't.
I think that says a lot then. Okay. And you just mentioned repercussions there, and I'll do like I did Asia. I'll keep poking to see what I can get out of you here. How much, but I am aware of some of the repercussions just from research, I believe. But I'm just curious because you were you moved from a post, or were you reassigned? Let's say you're reassigned to a new position at the Pentagon's Joint Staff, which doesn't seem like I don't know how that's viewed, but I'm just curious if you can talk a little bit about the retaliatory measures taken against you, or how that ended up. Were you victim to some level of, well, you said repercussions, but I wonder if that career-wise, how that came about, or what you can speak to on this episode regarding that.
Yeah, the short answer is yes, I was retaliated against in numerous ways. I was removed from my position. Let's see, I had a protective, or I had the equivalent of a restraining order taken out against me. I was told I had to go to talk to NCIS. I had a mental examination, which I can report that both mental examinations found me fit and emotionally, and my mental health is just fine. That was just that's what was going to happen. And I knew it going in. I wasn't fully prepared for it, but we adapt, and overcome. And you're right that eventually, after that came down, I was assigned to the Joint Staff. I was, which is the staff or the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So it's kind of inconsistent with some of the outlandish claims the Marine Corps made about me. But as I said, I'll probably do more in my podcast.
Of course, is that par for the course? Just because you every action has a reaction. So in your position, taking the kind of action that you took, that you were going to be retaliated against in some manner, you expected that, maybe not to the extent, and I'm sure you're going to get into that, at some point, obviously. But were you expecting of that, and that's just kind of par for the course there? You would think, or you say?
I didn't think it was going to, I expected something, but I didn't think it was going to go quite that far. I mean, they went, the military in general, they went to the point of trying to influence the Navy doctor that was assigned to my mental health screening. Okay. And by dropping notes under the door at night, which in the end helped me a lot, because the doctor said, like, that was crazy. And like, what is going on here? Who did you piss off? I said, well, the big guy.
Right. Okay. The biggest of guys,
it all
right.
turned out well. I have all my arms and legs and law license and retirement. So
awesome.
And luckily the chance to be a podcaster now.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, hey, that's certainly, that's better than it definitely could have turned out. Okay, well, good. Then we'll wait with bated breath to hear the multiple segments where the Military Justice Podcast, where you get into that. So speaking of just the kind of those repercussions and the retaliatory measures, here's another one of my odd segues, but I want to talk about military discipline, or military I don't even know what the right term is, but talking about two specific stories that you and I have mentioned before off air, and
right, yes,
that I think some folks are aware of. But those two stories being, though, the one case from, I think it was back in May at West Point, where you had the 16 Black female cadets that, I would say admonished, for lack of a better term, but I think you can get into it better, or maybe what happened. But basically, there was a photo of them giving the, Black Power fist, or holding up their fists, in solidarity, or however you want to view that. And but that's interesting, and for a few different reasons. And I want to ask you your opinion on it. But a couple of things that came to mind for me. Number one, the fact that West Point, that there were Black female cadets at West Point. That was the first thing. I was like, oh, really? And then I was like, what? There's 16. There's more than 10? There's 16? Damn. So that was the first thing that surprised me. I may not be surprising anyone else, but that kind of surprised me. And then obviously just the story and the fact that an investigation was opened, and then ultimately, I said, I think they were just admonished. But I know you had some feelings on that. back around the time that it happened. You talked about it on Task and Purpose.
Absolutely. So Nate Bethea and I talked about it on Task and Purpose Radio. So if your listeners can also get his point of view. But I think we were in concurrence that these were 16 women in uniform taking a photograph. These were official photographs being taken by the Army. They were all the cadets were out there taking photographs, and they're posed. Really, I think it's a stretch to say that having one arm up in the air is only synonymous with Black Power.
Right.
That is just a celebratory gesture, and that you have to look through a fairly racially tinted lens to come out with the determination that they were somehow improperly holding one arm up, and that I agree with you. I don't know if they were admonished. I don't know what happened, but that they were. I believe they were issued a letter or talked to and said, "Well, you really need to be careful about how you portray yourself and how other people will see this," which I can't see as anything other than, well, we don't want this many Black women at West Point, so don't rub our nose in it.
Right, yes.
And it was, which is ridiculous. All of the service academies, very competitive, great institutions, turn out incredible people, and you just tainted those 16 women. I can't believe that they're tainting them just the way they feel about the Army as they start out their careers. Because they were celebrating that they had all graduated, were about to graduate. It's part of that kind of soft racism in the military. I think the military has been good about doing away with overt racism, but the soft racism of, African American women, you need to keep a low profile when you're here because you don't want to upset people because you're here.
I'm pulling the picture up again while we're talking just so I can refresh my memory. This is I just see solidarity, celebration, solidarity, even if it is, because that's what it means too. These are women who accomplished something. They have the two swords up at the top. This is a very, some are smiling. This is right. Which is not the. Now some do look. Wait, but that's all. That even me saying what I'm about to say or was going to say is all subjective anyway. I don't know what the heck they're thinking when they're looking at this picture. I have no idea what's going through their mind or their motivation.
I think the motivation was pretty plain, that they were just happy that they're graduating and wanted to take a photograph to commemorate their group.
It's just funny the kind of reaction that something like that brings when, I don't know if you said this or not, but you can discount these very accomplished women, as you mentioned, because, they threw their fist up, so they must be some anarchist or upset or angry, right. Or no, they're just, they're happy to graduate and solidarity, baby, and let's keep it moving. So
right.
To get into the more recent story when it comes to, it just so happens that these both are regarding females, and Black females, but we've got Jessica Sims, a sailor for 12 years who was recently, I don't know if is the right term or not, but let go by the Navy for essentially not cutting her hair. That she basically had, twist or dreads or natural hair and had it up in a bun, which actually my daughter is about to be 13 and she has a natural hair, has hair down the middle of her back, but wears a natural and rocks a bun every day to school. You know what I mean? So I'm familiar without the dreadlocks. I'm familiar with this hairstyle, the natural look. So anyway, again, just kind of getting your opinion on this specific story and a 12-year veteran of the Navy to have to deal with that. Kind of goes along the lines of all the stuff we've probably discussed already, but I'm just curious if you had a specific thought, especially when it comes to something as specific as hair and identity.
We had that same issue. Luckily, the Army, the military, finally saw the light with a number of Sikh individuals, Sikh
Okay.
men,
Right.
that, members of the Sikh religion, they don't cut their hair,
Right.
and they wear it in, a traditional head wrap.
Exactly.
And it took years of problems to finally allow these men to serve like that. They have camouflage head wraps that look totally normal, and the idea that somehow this corpsman is unprofessional because, I've seen pictures of her hair. I've seen Marines with hair very similar. That's one way of wearing your hair, that it's tightly cropped. It stays in place, especially for, like you're saying, your daughter athletes, people that, don't want their hair flopping around. That is a common way of doing it.
Right.
And the idea that, we can't have that, it really belies more of a problem with the institution, that it's so quick to kick out somebody because, you don't conform to our current norms. If you go back and look in history, you go look at a picture from, the Civil War. Generals had crazy, or soldiers had crazy facial hair. Mustache. George Washington had a ponytail, and it's just,
you know what? When he's on the what do you call it, the perch of that boat or that ship, he definitely does have a ponytail. You're right.
Right. So it's just this wanting to have these subtle ways of trying to shape and keep the military the way that some less than enlightened people want, like, hey, we don't want these women taking this picture. We don't want anyone with this hairstyle that doesn't look just like everybody else's. And it's wrong and counterproductive. Obviously she performed well for 12 years in the military, and she was denied reenlistment, not allowed to continue her Navy career because of a hairstyle. And they hold on and say, well, it's because with that hairstyle, a gas mask wouldn't fit. Spend 2 minutes in the military and know about any special forces, Marine Recon, Rangers, Navy SEALs. Those guys are all rocking beards.
Right.
And to enforce it against that young woman, it's really that will not be viewed well by history.
Right.
That we've ended somebody's career because of, her hair is, tight against the scalp, the things that you would think about, necessary for military service. She could wear a helmet. She could run without it getting, in her eyes. Those type of things. It wasn't. You can't tell me that she couldn't do her job because of it. And I think that history won't look well on that decision.
Oh, I hope so. Anyway, and I think, I guess the last thing on all of on this thing is we talk a lot about, or not a lot. Well, we do talk a lot about the kind of white patriarchal system that we're all living in. It's not just we're all in this system, and that's kind of what we are. The slow to change, be it the general or even in our normal society, we got to get to a point where we're moving past that, where people are open and understanding. It's amazing, still in 2016 that it's not that amazing, because as you talked about earlier, some people think things are far away, but even if you talk about, World War II, that's not that long. That's not that long ago.
We can all have grandparents that were still around then.
Exactly. My grandfather's 90 and my grandmother's 88 or whatever. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's not that long ago. Within their lifetime, it's not that long ago. But these conversations like this with you are very important as we discuss. So hopefully we've done something here. I know we've kind of shifted and moved, but I think we
I love
maintain.
being on here. This is like most of your podcasts. You have a great interview style. I love your stuff.
Well, I appreciate it, man. You're too kind with that for sure. So the last thing I have for you is to go podcasting once again, and we talk about the great Sarah Koenig and the pod mother. You did get to legally stalk her one night at an event. So I wanted to ask you about, you told the story I think you were on Crime Writers On.
Oh, yeah.
And you talked about it, but I wanted to see if you could just rehash that or kind of tell us about your meeting and conversation. I know you guys talked about like season 2 specific, but just about that kind of conversation and meeting, if anything you want to share for those of us who haven't had the pleasure, because the producer was Julie was there too.
Yeah, Julie, they were doing their road show, and they were up at UC Davis, which is a few hours from me up in University of California, Davis. And so I went up there to watch their live show where they talk really about the first season and how they started Serial. And so I figured there might be a Q&A, but maybe not. So I booked the most expensive hotel that was within walking distance.
Okay.
Because I figured they might be staying there. And so right after the talk, I went back and hung out in the little bar area at the hotel, and it turns out that both of them were there. They talked to me for an hour.
Oh, wow.
They were fascinating. Such nice women. And they were really giving with their time. If anybody interested in podcasting, I mean, those two are the pinnacle of success. Of course.
Okay.
We would all love to have Serial's numbers, but they couldn't have been nicer. They were encouraging. We talked about, and they were just for really normal people. They talked about how they came from being NPR reporters to, in the podcast world, they're it. Their mother, that's Mother Podcast.
Right.
So they were very giving with their time. Couldn't be happier that getting to meet them. It was really good.
I don't have to say that's awesome. I think that's a bit of an understatement. So just a quick question. Did any of your conversation get into their response? And obviously I think I've heard Sarah and Julie both talk about their response to the spinoffs, for lack of a better term. But I'm curious, did you spend any time about that specific item with them? And
Julie listens to, if I remember correct, Julie listens to the spinoffs or the shows of, like Crime Writers on Serial, now Crime Writers On. She listens to those. Sarah is probably the smartest of us all. She doesn't listen. She's aware of them and likes them, but doesn't listen to podcasts, and she for sure doesn't listen. She doesn't read comments, which I think I should probably listen to her on that.
Right,
because the comment field can be a minefield of trolls. So I think Sarah's content in knowing her accomplishments and not getting involved with the trolls.
She's right. She's not like me, insecure, and has to go and see what the people are saying. So right,
I'm there with you, brother. I do. I make those same mistakes.
Right. So I think that's a good place to kind of wrap with a good, positive Sarah Koenig story and Julie Snyder story. I think we covered everything. What do you think?
I think it's great.
Awesome. Okay. So thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate, again, you listening to our show and supporting us. And people need to be like you and go to iTunes and leave a rating and review like my man Weirick did. Okay. Like if Weirick can go on iTunes and show and show some love, and this is way before.
And I'll tell you that your listeners, it is really helpful to get those reviews. So please do.
Yeah, see, listen to the man, okay? This is an important man. He's got one name he goes by. Again, that was really gracious. And that was before I even talked to you about coming on the show or you reached out. So really, really nice. Thank you very much. So once again, let's talk about your show coming up so people can get ready for that. And anything else you want to plug, appearances on other shows you want to talk about. I know you're the man about town when it comes to podcasting and military and whatnot. So anything you're doing, you want to let us know and how people can follow you and get a hold of you as well?
They can go to probably the best place is @podcastmj, and that'll be the Military Justice Podcast. I'll have links there and information on my podcast, the Military Justice Podcast. And please go back and listen to Task and Purpose Radio if you'd like a little more in-depth discussion on a lot of things we talked about here, or the Bergdahl case.
No doubt.
And hopefully we'll be coming off summer vacation pretty soon, and Task and Purpose Radio will be back up.
Awesome. All right.
And go rate the Vocal Minority Report.
My man. See, that's my man right there. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Oh, hey, one more thing. I've been meaning to do this for all the guests. Can I get you to do a liner and say your name, who you are, and say that you're a part of the vocal minority?
Oh, yes. Want me to do that right now?
Yeah. That's cool. And I'll just save it for future. I've been meaning to do this and kind of get an audio autograph to kind of keep these and have and play with. So I'm remembering it to do it now. So if you wouldn't mind, I'd appreciate it.
So name and I'm part of the vocal minority.
Correct. Yes.
Great. Okay. This is Lieutenant Colonel James W. Weirick, and I'm part of the vocal minority.
Thank you very much. Perfect.
This has been a Vocal Neighbors production.